Welcome back to another episode of AI Rabbit Holes. This is a show that dives deep down the rabbit holes of AI and marketing so you can work smarter and scale faster. Now, the objective of this episode today is to provide non technical business owners, creators, or anyone seeking automation solutions with really a clear roadmap to launch quick AI automations that slash busy work and also increase overall revenue. And on today's episode, I'm super excited to welcome Doc Williams. Now, Doc Williams is an AI YouTuber with over 43,000 subscribers and an expert in AI automations. His resume includes ESPN, VaynerMedia, AppSumo, and his objective with his YouTube channel is to help busy, non technical entrepreneurs use AI and no code tools to turn ideas into income. So, Doc, first of all, thank you so much for hopping on.
Hey man, appreciate you having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And Doc and I actually connected at Kit's Craft and Commerce conference a few weeks ago, and he was up there doing a panel. I was like, God, this guy's impressive. How have I not heard of him? So thank you so much for being here. So you say you teach busy, non-technical entrepreneurs to turn ideas into income with AI and no code. So why should a business owner or someone like myself consume Doc's content versus everyone else out there that covers that topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really comes down to I try to make it simple. A lot of people, the information, it's really difficult to understand. And I come from a non technical background. In fact, I'm severely dyslexic. So when I was trying to learn how to program and do all of these things, I struggled a lot. And I wanted to learn these things, but there wasn't a lot of information out there or information the way that I like to enjoy it. And so that's what I do on my channel.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You got some really good content on there too. And I'll leave that link in the description below too, if I didn't mention that already. So, what was that light bulb moment for you to just kind of go all in on no code AI automations as a content creator?
Yeah, I think it really started around the pandemic, and I was working with a lot of different businesses, and really, I would work with clients and send them just videos to see how I could improve their business. And someone's like, "Hey, man, you should instead of having unlisted videos, why don't you just make them public?" And I really didn't think anyone would want to watch any of my videos, and so that's what the genesis was. I was like, if people think it might be useful, okay, I'll make them public. I don't think it's really going to catch on, and that's how it all started, man.
Very relatable to how my channel started about a year and a half ago too. So, when it comes to the basics of AI automations, where do you say is the very first place that non-technical business owners should start, right? There's a million
Yeah,
different things.
yeah.
Where should they start and go from there?
So I would first break down what gives you the most stress or what is taking the most time. And what I mean by that is some people are like, oh, I'm spending like 8 hours to do X, Y, and Z. But sometimes there's something that might be taking only 10 or 15 minutes, but it's soul crushing. Like you'll do everything to avoid it. You'll leave, you'll cut the grass. You just don't want to think about it. I really say focus on either something that is just crushing your soul or something that is taking up 80% of your time. Pick one or the other and then start researching and writing out what you're doing, what do you need help with, even before you go down the rabbit hole of trying to find an AI tool and everything like that. Just write down in normal words how you describe your pain and what you're doing, and then we can navigate and find the right tool for you and what you need to do.
What are some common tasks that you see business owners struggle with or kind of get in the first glimpse of automations?
Usually something to do with data entry, where they're either adding something into a spreadsheet and like they're manually doing something. And I did not know this was a thing until going into this world. I cannot believe so many companies still use fax machines and like and still
You
like
should see sticky notes and on the computers and stuff, you know?
it's crazy. I'm just like, what's going on here? So any of those kind of things, if you're just constantly writing things down and you can't tell your own handwriting or you're in a rush and you're trying to all of those things are like prime time for automation. And then from automation, then we can do stuff with AI and stuff like that. But I would say something where it's data entry. And then the other one would be if you're trying to connect two different systems or you're just spending a lot of time manually going from one system to another and you're copying and pasting a lot of things. Those are the two main things.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. But let's talk about things that shouldn't be automated. Are there any tasks in your opinion that shouldn't be automated that, move the needle for a lot of these businesses?
Tons. I think anything where you need to have your eye. Okay, number one, if it costs a lot of money and you need to just verify or check on something, don't automate that. You can have something, and you'll see it in some automation. They'll call it like human in the loop, where it comes back to a human to verify before you go on. That's something. But in general, I my rule of thumb is if it's a critical functionality of your business to make a lot of money, or that it's detrimental, that it could really destroy your business with something being messed up, that is where you still need to verify before you can have another automation take place or something with AI. Those are my two areas.
For me, I see it in high ticket sales, both on like the personal side,
Yeah.
whether that's face to face or even through email copywriting, right? I
Yeah.
struggle to let that be fully automated when I know certain words and phrases resonate from a human standpoint versus Claude or Chat GPT running the show.
No, you're exactly right. Yeah. A lot of times when we're working with companies that are using AI agents for, to basically segment their list, they're doing calls. I would say definitely if you're trying to segment, okay, it depends on the volume, but if you're trying to convert and you know that you need to be on the phone, or your experience cannot be conveyed through an AI agent, yeah, don't turn that over yet.
Yeah, and it sounds
Don't do it.
so easy and shiny, right? But we're going to get into that here in a little bit. One of the biggest issues that I have with AI and automations, and just in general that I've experienced working with some of these businesses, resistance to change, right? I'm sure you've seen this all the time too.
Yeah.
How do you get business owners and stakeholders excited and optimistic about automating tasks?
That's a really good point. I would say it really comes down to the transformation story. Talk about where they are, what's happening in their business, and then talk about the result. I don't dig into the weeds and say like I've got this like 15-step system.
It's a 100 node N8N automation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't tell them about it. I don't show them anything like that. I just talk about transformation. You're here. This is the pain that you're experiencing. This is what we can do as a result. And once they really can resonate with that, then the rest is easy. I find that when you're pulling up your browser, you're telling them about Airtable, you're telling them about Make, they just glaze over. And I'm like, oh, you lost it. Like they don't care. So yeah, just that transformation story does all the heavy lifting.
That's a super good point, right? They like to keep it simple, keep it non-technical, but just show them the end result and just throw analogies in there and just make it easy to follow and understand. That's what I've learned about this whole thing with AI.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I will probably could talk about and geek out about. I love talking about all of these other things, but for the most part, it is so overwhelming for them. They're still trying to grapple that this is a thing, that it's possible. So I just nope, I don't even bring it up.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some rookie automation mistakes that you see non-technical founders make the most often?
That they ask ChatGPT to do something, and then they just think that it's going to work automatically. A lot of people they'll ask chat like, hey, I want to use Zapier, so an automation platform to connect a couple things. They're like, it's telling me all the steps. Well, a lot of times it might just be lying to you. Like, you can't do that. And they've never read documentation. They've never looked at what Zapier can and cannot do or make. And so they're just like, why isn't it working? Like, I put it in and then I copy. So I usually see them trusting too much in ChatGPT in their final answer.
Yeah, that's a really good takeaway there. So now let's get a little more tactical, right? We've already said some words like Zapier, N8N, Make.com. What are your preferred node code automation platforms? And is there really a big difference between them in your opinion?
That's a great question. Uh, I have a few, but it kind of depends on the use case. I think for new people, if it depends on what they're trying to automate, but if I'm trying to teach them for their team to then like go out and like take the project, after they work with me, Zapier is usually my favorite because it's just very easy. It's on Rails. I think Make and N8N are my preferred, but there's a steeper learning curve, and you've got to teach them concepts, I feel like, for them to really be good at those things. Versus Zapier, it's a flow chart, they can understand all of those things. To that point, I am extremely cheap and I'm always testing things. So I like active pieces. I'll do things with N8N. It just kind of depends on the workload. Another one which I like a lot, it's for heavy lifting if I'm doing a lot of data transformation, is like Pipe Dream. but it is
Okay.
not user friendly. It's not. It's meant for developers to move and do things quicker. And then one last thing, I got to shout them out because I think it's an interesting, fascinating community if you're doing anything with like Internet of Things, and that's Node Red. It's a cult following, but if you're doing anything with automation in your home, that that's top notch.
Is that a tool, Node-RED?
Node-RED is a platform and a way to use Raspberry Pis and tons
Okay.
of other things. It's a really cultish following. Like, do not come in there and like, hey, I'm new. Like, they don't want to hear anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, but it's just a fascinating group, and it's open source. And there's so many things what people have built. That's one that I'm like, I don't get enough. I don't get enough clients or students that ask about it, but I bring it up all the time.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll have to look at that one after the show. But
Yeah.
selfishly, one question that I have for you actually, because I'm decent with make.com. I use it a lot for content repurposing,
Yep.
some other
Yep.
automation here and there. Why should I invest time to learn a tool like N8N, for instance, that has all the buzz online right now when I'm well versed enough in make.com to do what I need it to do? What's your response to questions like that?
Oh, that's a great question. I would just say for me, it you gotta like a platform that you actually like building on. If you don't like it, you're not gonna stick with it. And you're right, with all the buzz and all of these workflows that are people are doing with N8N, it's sexy. Everyone wants to do it. But a lot of times it comes down to I think simplicity is a lot better. And a lot of these workflows, I'm like, I think they built them out to make them seem complicated and people love,
For
like,
sure.
ooh, I want that. The simple answer is I kind of depends on the use case and the workflow. I think N8N, their way that they approach agents, it's very novel and it's very easy to understand how you're going to make workflows. Make has now AI agents and they're
For
going to be
sure.
doing more. I think they're behind the eight ball and they're trying to, compete with it. So I kind of think it just depends on the use cases. But I've seen a lot of people, they've done heavy lifting with Make and it's a lot easier, less nodes, and they're doing just as much as N8N. So I think it just depends on your use case and what you want to do. But N8N, it has a lot of buzz, but I'm happy for N8N because I feel like they've been like the the stepchild for years that people haven't talked about. And I'm glad they're
Zapier.
getting their shine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and now everyone's, and I think right now with AI, especially, everyone's pushing people. They're pushing each other so fast that all the platforms are getting so much better, faster, and they're dropping the price because it's so much competition. So I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Like, this is great for me.
Oh, and the free platforms that they have, like the free trials that you get on make.com with all the free access without even paying for anything, like it's
Yeah.
pretty unheard of, right? With Zapier, you got to deal with all the zaps and that can add up really quick.
In the premium zaps versus all this, I always say like pricing wise, if we're just doing pricing, what I would do, I would go with Make. I think they have the most,
100%.
I would do it. I usually see a lot of people, I'm trying to explain the cost savings, all this stuff, and a lot of business owners come into the Zapier pipeline that I talk to, and they're like, yeah, can I go with Zapier? I'm like, yeah, but, and I give them all the stuff, but they're already the branding and they're already there. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll stay here. But Make is where I would tell someone to go.
What about in the future? And I'll get into MCP here in a little bit. I'm curious to hear your take on that. But what about in the future? Do you think tools are going to replace make.com, N8N, Zapier? Like I look at like a Lindy AI, or I mean, you could even throw like a gum loop in there as well, right? What do you think about some of these tools? Like, will they be replaced in the future, do you think, with simpler solutions?
That's a great question. I don't know. I would say that there are so many choices and skill level. I think if there are companies that are going to be like their Zapier, Make, all those things, they have so much of the market. It's going to take a long time for these smaller micro tools or the next startups to like pop off. I think with like you were saying, MCPs are going to be very interesting, but I still think unless it gets easier for people to understand, everyday people to like implement it, I still think it's a great gateway drug. For example, when I'm teaching my students or I'm working with clients, I use still IFTTT, if then that, to
Mm.
show them the concept for them to understand the on off buttons for people to see the recipes. It gets them curious, and then they're like, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, hey, now we're going to leave IFTTT and here's something like Make. And so it's just that way for people to gain confidence, because I think a lot of times it's intimidating and all of these things. I'm looking for easy wins. So if I can teach them very easily for them to have that concept, and then I have them write down like what they wanted to do and think about like on off, what do they want to do, then we can go over there. So I don't know if it's going to replace it in the market, but I definitely think it's going to eat up the market share, because I feel like a lot of hobbyists, I started with Make and Zapier because I knew what I wanted, but I wasn't a developer. And now there's all these other things we can do with AI that's like, I don't really need these platforms a lot of times. But if I need to do something really fast, I need it to be secure, I need it to be decreasing the error rate, I'm still going to go to Make so much quicker because I can build out, because I've just used it so much. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I still need to do a lot of work inside Make, but I understand the foundations for sure. And you mentioned that this
Mhm.
stuff is overwhelming and confusing. I completely agree with that. I see all the time on the internet, especially with N8N. You alluded to this earlier. There's these fancy, shiny 100 node N8N automations and workflows. And in my head, I'm like, okay, let's say I get this, download the JSON, upload the JSON. Well, now I'm spending hours on each input trying to troubleshoot what goes in. So you would have just been better off creating it from scratch, in my opinion, than even going down that route.
You're absolutely right. And I think it's more of, it's that instant gratification. Someone's like, "Hey, opt in and I'll send you this file." I know so many people, like, they see JSON, they're like, "What do I do? Like, how do I upload this?" Like, what, like, to your point, it reminds me a lot when I first started like doing website development and using WordPress, and I didn't know how to upload a theme. Like, there would be so many places, and this is probably like probably 2010 or
Okay.
something,
So I'm
where,
familiar with like Envato
oh
and
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. So you download something from Envato, then you've got it. And when I first got started, they were so far ahead of me. There was never instructions for someone like me to be like, you go to the dashboard. This is how you upload the theme. If they're just skipping the first four steps because they've been in the game so long. And I feel like that's the same with automation and what's going on. You've got to teach them the basics of just thinking about what it would be like to create automation. What does that even mean? And so the simpler, the better. N8N, I still think is great. I still think it's closer to low code and granular work. It's very powerful. Still think that it's just crushing it in the market right
Yeah,
now.
it is.
But yeah, it's not. A lot of people are signing up for N8N and then they're like, now what? How?
For
Where do I
sure.
go? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about AI agents quickly. You mentioned that earlier, and I do agree with you. I've dabbled in N8N a little bit. I don't know much about that platform, but I do agree with you that the interface and building agents is way easier and makes more sense on there versus like a make.com or a Zapier. So, in terms of AI agents, there's just so much confusion and hype around what agents can do, what they are, what they can't do. And in my opinion, like, how would you say to someone the difference between an AI agent versus an automation, right? How would you distinguish those two? And
Yeah.
what should you use in certain scenarios?
Yeah, it's a great question. So agents, I just give them an analogy. They have arms and legs. They can grab and they can get things and they can get things done, versus an automation, it's going to run through something. And when it's done with that automation, it's done. So you can have it on a schedule, you can trigger it to do things. But agents allow you, I usually give the example, you have a flight, and some agents will be able to find the flight, be able to purchase a ticket for you, and get you to where you need to go. Now, there's a lot of steps in between and what
Right.
they would want to do, but that gives them an idea for, oh, they can make decisions. It can do that. Another way, I'll just say it's your assistant. Whatever you wanted to do, you want it to go and get you some coffee. Figuratively, that's what it can go ahead and do. It knows your information, it knows what kind of coffee you like. And then it's your job to, again, make that kind of agent and make sure that it does what you want.
That was a very good explanation. In my opinion, the average non technical business owner or creator is better off starting off with automations and learning how those work versus they just go down the rabbit hole of agents and try to figure things out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, 9 times out of 10 at this point, automation is still going to help them or solve their problem. AI is very sexy. And the same thing I say, like, it's AI, it's sad. I love no code. I love all these things, but the reality is it didn't catch on in the minds of people. And so AI and automation people can understand, but no code can still solve so many different things. It's just not the vocabulary, and It just hasn't got the traction that it needs.
It's silver bullet syndrome, man. Everyone wants AI to be their silver bullet for every problem. That's just not reality.
Absolutely. No, I
Um,
agree.
let's talk about MCP now. That's kind of the hot new thing. And I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about it. I've integrated it inside my Claude Pro account and I've done a few other things here and there. But with the popularity of MCP, in your opinion, Doc, what kind of impact does this have on just building automations and AI in the future?
I think that it is going to allow you to have your own personalized Zapier, basically. So what I mean by that is MCPs. Like, I did not make this analogy. I maybe Anthropic or other places outlets, but basically, it's like a USB port. It's universally allowing things to connect together and for it to work. So MCPs will allow you to describe in normal language what you could do in Make or Zapier. Say, for instance, you're saying, hey, I have a Google Sheet. I know the name of the sheet. I need you to connect it to MailChimp. And every time I get a new email, I need you to put it into my Google Sheet. That's what basically an MCP can do. You can use normal language to describe the type of automation or type of AI that you needed to do. It's very powerful. It's very new, and there's a lot of errors that it can make. And so we're still learning the best kind of language to, the vocabulary, the structure of instructions. But that could be a game changer where now you can be building very technical automation sequences and, I would say, assistance with AI to do different things in your business. And so then you might say, like, well, what's the point of making Zapier? Well, they're going to make sure that they have it implemented in their platform as well to just, scale it up even more. So you'll see that with Zapier and Maker trying to do some things. But if you're savvy and you want a very specific type of connections, maybe things that Zapier or Make might not even have, you could potentially be doing that with MCPs and make your own custom automations that are specific for your business.
If you had to explain the difference between an MCP and an API, how would you explain that?
That's a great question. I would say that an API, if for like someone like brand new, APIs, simply put, are two systems talking to each other. So if you're in a library and you're asking the librarian, hey, I need this book, the API, they can go and find that book and say, here you go. Or you're like, hey, go to that book and tear out this certain page, right? So you're deleting something. That is going to be APIs. MCPs is a protocol how you can have two systems to talk together, and you're giving instructions how the two systems can talk to each other with natural language. APIs, if you're coding or if you're doing that, are very precision based. You're doing this, and now I can do something very specific in the library. MCPs, you're giving instructions and you're hoping that the librarian will go and do what you're asking for. It's so new. Sometimes the librarian picks up the wrong book or does different things. So it's very interesting. It's very new, to be continued.
Yeah, I love that analogy with the library. That was very well explained. I remember when Claude actually first released MCP, when I was trying to figure out how to connect to the internet, and I would just use Perplexity with Claude's API because that was kind of a workaround at the time.
Yeah.
And they launched MCP a long time ago, and I just kind of just went right over my head. I was like, well, screw that, it doesn't matter. And now it's like the hot new thing.
Yeah, and it's going to be good. I've used it a couple different ways. You can do very specific things. I think it goes back to descriptions and how you use it. It can get kind of wildly out of there if you wanted to do these things. It can return some very interesting results or just error out when you're doing it. So I love it. It's just, well, to be continued. We'll see what happens.
I was just going to ask you, how are you leveraging MCP at all in your own business or with clients?
Yeah, I'm doing that right now with different use cases. So every time I'm looking at MCPs or anything with automation or AI, I'm trying to see, do I need it for myself or can I try to solve something with a client? And then I just catalog it. So right now we're using it for, I would say, simpler tasks of like subscribers from this CRM, customer relationship management system, and then bringing it into Google Sheets or bringing in some kind of database like Airtable. I have been experimenting with using MCPs for draft responses for very specific types of emails. So, say for instance, if I'm trying to talk to potential sponsorships, when I'm getting in the title sponsorship, I want it to read out the email, draft a response, and give me several different options of how I could do it, and then also message me on Slack that they just got a message and
Hmm.
all those kind of things. So I'm looking at that. Bottom line, I'm looking for ways to create my own VA using these systems, and then step by step create all these different agents using MCPs. So not having one VA that does everything, just having several different types of VAs that are use cases, and then I can have a whole have a whole army like that.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So, looking 6 to 12 months ahead, Doc, what do you think is the number one skill, in your opinion, that will matter more than anything, like prompting or building AI automations like we know today? If you're looking 6 to 12 months ahead, what is a skill that you think someone should have to kind of stay ahead of the curve here?
I think, and this might be very basic, but curiosity. You've got to just be curious about something that you care about. AI, there's such a big world, text to video, all these things. It can be really overwhelming. I would say be curious about what you want to solve for yourself, or a vertical. And then the other thing is just be willing to be adaptable, and don't get tied in that it has to be one platform or the other. So many platforms. I mean, Cursor, Windsurf. I mean, all these are popping up in the last couple of months.
That's just the vibe coding
Yeah,
world. Yeah.
exactly. Like it's just too much. So it's like, think about what you want to, what you're curious about, what you want to really dive into, that side of the world, and then also think about principles and how you can learn these things and then bring it over to something else. If you do that, there's too many things that pop up every like 3 to 6 months to even predict. Like, I saw text app stuff before V0, all this stuff last June. I did a couple videos. I would have never imagined in November like it to pop off, and vibe coding, and I'm hearing grandmas talk about vibe coding. Like, I would never have imagined that in such a short period of time, and Bolt doing their giant hackathon that just broke a record or something. Like, it's amazing. So I'm like, I would say don't be paralyzed, just be curious, adaptable. You'll be great.
Yeah, one thing it's really easy to get caught up, and I'm guilty of this. I'm sure you are too at some points. It's that demo loop. It's like there's a new tool here, new model here. Let me go test this automation. But then at the same time, you're taken away from things that move the business forward or move the channel forward. So there's always that's a big skill, trying to find that balance of staying up to date, but also implementing and moving forward.
Yeah, no, you're right. And there's two things with that. I would say I had to limit how much information I take in, because it just becomes, I get too overwhelmed, or I get like, oh, I should be doing this, or I feel guilty not like getting on these trends. The other thing is, to you mentioned like a skill. I would say like prompting is a really good skill, but I also think like just get used to normal conversations and explain it to your like grandma or to a 12-year-old. And I feel like that helps a lot with prompting. I think a lot
Oh
of people
yeah.
get into this like prompt engineering, like it's just explain it to someone that has no idea. And if you can do that, your prompts will be getting better, but also I think you can impact a lot more people to take advantage of AI, and things like ChatGPT, just teaching them that it's not anything crazy. Anyone can use these great tools.
Yeah, and if you can simplify things, it makes it a lot easier. I'll tell you one more thing too I've realized from this automations world. There are so many people out there that can build these fancy, crazy automations like we talked about earlier. But if you don't have the subject matter expertise on the type of tasks that you're building this automation for, it's all irrelevant, in my opinion. Like for me, I do a lot with SEO, marketing, content creation, things like that. Well, if I don't understand SEO best practices, how am I going to know what to input for my Claude module or my OpenAI module to get the desired output, right? It's kind of useless without subject matter expertise and understanding how to input these automations.
Yeah, no, no, you're exactly right. And to your point, you were talking about, earlier in the conversation, you said like between like do automation before AI. To your point, especially with marketing, it's very sexy what N8N can do for marketing, but I'm like, I love, shout out to Hanny with like repurpose.io, and teaching people like use this first, learn the basics, and then if it's falling short or it's something you don't like, then you can learn these other tools or different aspects to supplement what you're trying to do, or go more granular. But there's so many great tools that automation can just solve a bulk of these problems.
Completely agree. Well, Doc, this has been fun, and I appreciate your time hopping on this edition of AI Rabbit Holes. What type of content can we expect from Doc Williams on YouTube in the near future?
Oh, that's a great question. A lot more about AI and automation, but down the rabbit hole, vibe coding, that's what I'm going to be talking about a lot. I'm a huge fan, and I feel like vibe coding is what no code would promise us like 5 or 8 years ago. And it's really exciting to teach people how to create, I feel like I don't know, personalized apps or micro apps. I think that there's a huge world out there. And so you're going to be seeing some new content in the coming weeks.
Awesome. I'm not a developer. I always tell everyone, though, everything is literally a wrapper. Once you understand what a wrapper is, everything makes more sense.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Where can people follow you besides YouTube to learn more about what you're working on?
That's a great question. You can find me on LinkedIn and just look for DOC Doc Williams, and then Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, underscore Doc Williams. And I think I'm the most active on Twitter and YouTube, and that's it.
Awesome, Doc. I'll leave all those links in the description below. And thank you to everyone for listening to this edition of AI Rabbit Holes. Be sure to tune in again next time.